Hello, Adrian. This is your grandpa, Stephen, and I'd like to read a story to you entitled Vasilissa the Brave and Baba Yaga from a book of Russian folk tales compiled by James Reardon and illustrated by Andrew Breakspear. Let's begin. Vasilissa the Wise and Baba Yaga. I know I said Vasilissa the Brave, but she is a very brave girl. You'll come to find out. There once lived an old man and woman with their daughter, Vasilissa. One day the woman called the girl to her bedside and told her this: "Daughter, I am soon to die. Listen hard and heed my words." Thereupon she took a little doll from under the covers and handed it to Vasilissa. "Take good care of this doll and show her to no one. Whenever you need help, give the doll a bite to eat and ask her advice. She will tell you what to do." With that, the mother kissed her daughter, closed her eyes, and breathed her last. For a time the old man sorrowed and sighed, then sought another wife. The widow he married had 2 daughters of her own, 2 of the most spiteful, hard-to-please young madams that ever lived. Because Vasilissa was so pretty, her stepsisters were extremely jealous. They and their mother were forever tormenting the little girl, making her work from dawn to dusk. How they wished her fair face to furrow in the wind, to roughen in the sun, to darken in the rain. Yet Vasilissa bore all their taunts in silence and always had her chores finished on time. And while her stepsisters grew fat and ugly from being idle, she grew fairer still, not by the day, but by the hour. Of course, the little doll helped her all the while. Early each morning, Vasilissa would milk the cow, and then, giving the doll some milk, she would say, little doll, listen, my dear, as I pour all my troubles into your ear." And late at night, when everyone was asleep, she would lock her door, rock the doll in her arms, and give her the scraps she had saved from supper. And she would say, little doll, listen, my dear, as I pour all my troubles into your ear." She would tell the doll how miserable she was, how her stepmother and sisters were always scolding her. The doll would first eat and drink, then comfort her with words of advice, and do all her chores. As Vasilissa sat in the shade, twisting flowers for her hair, the vegetable beds were weeded, the fire was lit, the floors were swept, and the breakfast was cooked, all in the twinkling of an eye. What is more, the doll also gave her herbs to protect her skin against the sun, wind, and rain, so that she became prettier than ever. One day, in autumn, the old man left for market and was not due back for several days. That night, when it grew dark, rain lashed the windows and winds howled beneath the eaves. To each of the 3 girls, the stepmother set a task. The first she set to embroidery, the second to knitting socks, and Vasilissa to spinning yarn. Then, leaving a single birch splinter that flickered in the corner where the 3 girls sat, she went to bed. For a time, the splinter of wood sputtered and snapped, then suddenly went out. "What are we to do?" cried the stepsisters. "It is dark, and we must finish our work. Someone will have to fetch a light." Now, The wooden cottage stood on the edge of a dark wood in which lived a witch, Baba Yaga, cunning and sly, who gobbled folk up in the wink of an eye. Hers was the only house that would have a light. "I'm not going to Baba Yaga," said the first daughter. "I'm doing embroidery, and my needle is bright enough for me to see by." "I'm not going to Baba Yaga," said the second daughter. "I'm knitting socks, and my 2 needles are bright enough for me to see by." "Then Vasilissa must go," they yelled together. So, saying, they pushed their sister out of the house. Poor Vasilissa went first to the barn, set some scraps before her doll, and said, little doll, listen, my dear, as I pour all my troubles into your ear." And she told the doll how her sisters were sending her to Baba Yaga's. The wicked witch would surely gobble her up. The little doll ate her food in silence, and her eyes began to glow like 2 bright candles. "Never fear, Vasilissa," it said. "Keep me with you, and Baba Yaga will do you no harm." So Vasilissa put the doll into her pocket and went off into the dark wood. All about her trees rose up like towering giants. No moon nor stars shone in the sky above. All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, a horseman galloped past. His face was white, his cloak was white, his horse was white, and its silver harness gleamed white in the forest gloom. No sooner had he passed than the white light of dawn filtered through the trees, and Vasilissa walked on. Presently a second rider galloped past. His face was red, his cloak was red, his horse was red, and its scarlet harness glowed bright in the gathering dawn. As he swept by, the red sun rose, kissing the girl with its warm rays and drying the dew in her hair. She walked on through the forest all day without a rest, until towards evening she arrived at a small glade. And there in the middle stood a wooden hut, on hen's feet, surrounded by a fence of human bones crowned with skulls. The gateposts were dead men's legs, the bolts were dead men's arms, and the lock was made of dead men's teeth. Vasilissa stood still, rooted to the spot in fear. Just at that moment, a third rider came galloping by. His face was black, his cloak was black, his horse was black, and its harness loomed black in the gathering gloom. As he rode on, black night descended, and in the darkness, the eyes of the skulls upon the fence began to glow like fire, lighting up the glade as bright as day. Vasilissa shivered and shook, too scared to move, yet worse was to come. Soon she felt the air tremble and the earth shake beneath her feet, as out of the forest came Baba Yaga, flying in a mortar, driving herself along with a pestle, and sweeping away her traces with a broom. At the gate of the hut, she paused and sniffed the air, her long, hooked nose pointing towards the girl. "Fo, fee, fo, fum, I smell the blood of a Russian," she cried. "Who are you?" "I am Vasilissa," the girl replied. "My sister sent me for light."
"Ah, Vasilissa," the witch shrieked. "I know your stepmother right enough. So, you want a light, do you? Then stay and work for me, and we'll see what we shall see. Turning to her gate, she cried, Unlock yourselves, my bolts so strong, open up my gates so wide.
As the gate swung open, she swept past in her mortar with Vasilissa close behind, and all was locked firmly as before. Once inside the witch's garden, a birch tree went to poke out the young girl's eyes, but the witch cried out,
Leave her be. It is I, Baba Yaga, who brings her here.
At the door of the hut lay a fierce hound who went to bite the girl.
Leave her be, screamed the witch. It is I, Baba Yaga, who brings her here.
Inside the door, a black cat went to scratch the girl.
Leave her be, yelled the witch. It is I, Baba Yaga, who bring her here.
You see, Vasilissa, she said,
you cannot escape from me. My cat will scratch you. My dog will bite you. My birch will poke out your eyes, and my gate will bar your way.
Baba Yaga then stretched herself upon the top of a stone stove, shouting loudly to the kitchen,
Come, girl, bring me my supper.
At that, a black-eyed serving maid hurried in with food enough for 10 grown men, a bucket of borscht and half a cow, 10 jugs of milk and a roasted sow, 20 chickens and 40 geese, 2 ox pies and cottage cheese, cider and mead and home-brewed ale, beer by the barrel and kvass by the pail. Baba Yaga ate and drank greedily, and all that remained for Vasilissa were bones to pick and a crust to gnaw. As the witch got ready for bed, she said,
Take this sack of grain and pick it through until not a husk remains. Have it done by the time I wake up, or I'll gobble you up.
With that, she closed her eyes and began to snore and whistle, making the timbers shake. Poor Vasilissa, meanwhile, took the crust of bread, put it before the little doll, and asked her advice. Fear not, said the doll. Say your prayers and go to bed. Morning is wiser than evening. The moment the girl was asleep, the little doll called out in a clear voice, Pigeon, sparrow, chaffniff, kite, there is work for you tonight. On your help, my feathered friends, for Vasilissa's life depends. The birds came flying in their flocks, more than the eye could see or the tongue could tell. They picked through the grain in no time at all. Into the sack went the seed, into the bin went the chaff. And before the night was spent, the sack was full and the job was done. Just as they were finishing, the white horseman galloped past. A new day dawned. When Baba Yaga awoke, she could not believe her eyes. All the work was done.
I am going out,
she snapped.
While I'm away, take that sack of black-eyed peas and poppy seeds and sort it out. If it's not done by my return, I'll roast you up for my supper.
She opened the door, whistled shrilly, and the pestle and mortar came sweeping up. In she stepped and was out of the yard in a thrice, flying over the trees. As she disappeared, the Red Rider galloped past, and the red sun rose in the sky. Vasilissa took a crust of bread to feed her doll and asked for her help. As soon as the doll's clear voice rang out, Come to me, you mice of the house and field, sort through the seeds, or her fate is sealed. Mice came running in swarms, more than the eye could see or the tongue could tell. And before the day was out, the job was done. Just as they were finishing, the black horseman rode past the hut, and black night descended. The eyes of the skulls began to glow like fire. The trees swished, and the leaves quivered as Baba Yaga came sweeping in.
"Have you done all I said?"
she cried. "It's all done, Granny," said the girl. Baba Yaga was furious, but there was nothing to be done.
"Well then, go to bed. I'm going to eat my supper."
While Vasilissa lay on rags behind the stove, she heard the witch talking to the black-eyed serving girl.
"Light the stove and make it hot. When I wake up, I'll roast the girl in the oven."
Whereupon she stretched out on the stove, put her chin on a shelf, her nose on a bench, covered herself with her foot, and began to snore so loudly that the whole forest shook. Vasilissa began to weep, and taking the little doll from her pocket, put a crust of bread before her, saying, little doll, listen, my dear, as I pour all my troubles into your ear." And the doll told her just what to do. Vasilissa went into the kitchen and curtsied low to the black-eyed maid. "Please help me," she said. "When you light the stove, sprinkle water on the wood so that it doesn't burn well. Here, take my handkerchief as reward." "Very well, Vasilissa," replied the serving maid. "I shall help you. No one has given me a present before. I'll tickle the witch's feet so that she sleeps more soundly while you run away as fast as you can." "But won't the 3 horsemen catch me and bring me back?" she asked. "Oh, no," said the maid. "You see, the white horseman is the light of day. The red rider is the rising sun. The black rider is the dark night. They will not harm you." Reassured, Vasilissa went to run from the hut, but the big black cat flew at her and would have scratched her face had she not tossed it a pie. As she ran down the steps, the dog darted out and would have bitten her had she not thrown it a bone. When she dashed down the path, the birch tree tried to lash her face with its branches, but she tied them with a ribbon from her hair, and the tree let her pass. The gate would have swung shut had she not oiled its hinges with the morning dew. Remembering the light for her sisters, she took a skull from the fence, stuck it on a stick, and set off for home. The skull's eyes cast a piercing gleam before her, lighting up the way. Meanwhile, when Baba Yaga awoke and saw the girl had gone, she screamed at her black-eyed maid.
"Why did you let her go?"
"Because she gave me her scarf," the girl replied. "I have served you all these years and received only cuffs and curses in return." Turning to her black-eyed cat, the witch screamed,
"Why did you let her go?"
"Because she gave me a pie," the cat replied. "I have served you all these years and never had as much as a crust from you." Into the yard rushed the witch into a fearful rage, shouting at her hound.
"Why did you let her go?"
"Because she gave me a bone," the dog replied. "I've served you all these years and never had even a scrap from you."
Birch tree,
yelled the witch.
"Did you not lash her face?"
"No, I let her pass
the birch tree said, for she bound my branches with a ribbon from her hair. I have been growing here these last 10 years, and you've never tied them even with a string. Baba Yaga hurried down the pathway to the gate.
Gate, gate,
she screamed.
Did you not bar her way?
No, I let her pass, the gate replied, for she put dew upon my bolts. All these years I've served you, and you've never sprinkled even water on them. Baba Yaga flew into a fury. She beat the dog and the big black cat. She thrashed the black-eyed maid, chopped down the tree and gate. She was so tired by then that she quite forgot all about the girl. In the meantime, Vasilissa ran home by the light of the skull. At dusk next day, she finally reached the house, seeing that there was still no light within. Her stepmother and sisters met her at the door.
What kept you so long, you good-for-nothing ragamuffin?
They all shouted at her. And snatching the skull from her hands, they took it into the house. Yet then a strange thing happened. The skull's glowing eyes fixed themselves upon the stepmother and her daughters and pierced them through and through. No matter where they tried to hide, the eyes followed them everywhere, burning, blazing, blackening, until they were reduced to cinders. Only Vasilissa remained unharmed. Next morning she took the skull and buried it deep beneath the garden. And in time, a bush of dark red roses grew up upon the spot. That same day, Vasilissa's father returned from market and heard the story from start to end. Truth to tell, he was glad to be rid of his evil wife and her two spoiled daughters. And from that day on, he and Vasilissa lived in peace and comfort. And of course, she kept the little doll safely in her pocket, just in case she might need her again someday.